Welcome back to Chortlecast. I'm one of your hosts, Jake, and with me, as always, the Stream King, the Far Cry guy, the Star Wars big boy himself.
Don't put that on me.
Steven.
This is a bad time.
He is here today to tell you how much he loves the sequel trilogy and how J.J. Abrams may be the greatest creative mind of our time, of our generation.
Yeah, he's right up there with Kojima, am I right?
We're going to be talking a lot about Star Wars today and The Witcher. So, this is Chortlecast, the official podcast of Chortle Games, where we talk about movies, video games, TV shows, anything else that we want to ever talk about. And yeah, we do have a great show for you this week. We are going to be talking about Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. There will be spoilers, but not right now. I'll alert you to spoiler talk. We're also going to talk about the new Witcher series on Netflix, which is great, and we'll probably not go into spoilers, but we'll again kind of reference that.
Yeah, I've yet to see anything from Witcher, so.
All right. Well, it's a great show on Netflix that everybody should be watching. But anyway, that's what we're doing. If you're watching along with us, we thank you. If you're listening along, we thank you for being here. You can catch the show every Monday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. YouTube is chortlegames.com. Twitch is chortle_games. And Facebook is at Chortle Games on Facebook. That's all the places you can watch. You can listen along through Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review there if you're there watching, listening, whatever. If you're watching the podcast bars, just go on by. But anyway, yeah, we're just going to dive into the show. First off, Steven, you've been doing a forward compatible this past week on Bastion.
I have.
The review for that should have posted before this podcast. It should post at a normal-ish time, 12 o'clock Central Time today.
Okay.
How was it, Steven? You know, like, just don't you don't have to go too far into it, but like, how was your process this week?
This is kind of nice having the podcast after the review's up, so I feel like I can talk freely to where instead of being like, it was fine, but did I like it? Watch the review. You'll already have watched the review, so
or not. They may have missed it.
And if you haven't, pause this video right now and go watch it.
Just hit that.
We worked really hard
button
on it,
and just go watch it.
So, how did it go? It went well, but it was way harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah, you struggled with this one.
I really struggled with this game because I thought that Force Unleashed was bad, and when I say bad, I mean hard to write a script for. But I wasn't prepared for a game that I wasn't sure how to articulate my praises for. And that's kind of what happened with Bastion, because I loved playing it again. I think it still totally holds up, which should be no surprise to anyone. And putting into words what holds up about it was difficult. So I ended up scrapping the entire script I had done on Saturday at like 2 p.m. And I was expecting to have already recorded for you to start the editing process by Saturday at 2 p.m. So had to do fresh start at that point. And I went with something different. And if you've watched it, you'll definitely be like, it was different, all right. And if you haven't, I encourage you to watch it. It's different. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. Be the judge.
Only time will tell.
Only you will tell me in the comments. But yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, Bastion was a fun one. And it was just kind of a nice, you got through it in 3 days, which is pretty good.
It was 5 hours total, I think.
Wow. See, that's crazy. That's a good pace, though. That's a good pace. I like it.
It's a really easy playing, easy listening kind of game, because it's not too difficult. You can make it difficult if you want to, but it's still engaging. The soundtrack just makes it to where it's kind of calming, easy to just pick up and play. It's the perfect Switch game, honestly.
Is it on Switch?
It is on the Switch.
Yeah, okay.
It is on the Switch. You should totally pick it up. And as I mentioned in the review, but I feel like I need to mention it one more time, for anyone who is on an iOS device like iPad, iPhone, Bastion is free right now. You can literally just go download it for free. Austin, one of our subs, already did that, and he's been really enjoying it. But I definitely recommend it. If you have one of those devices and you don't absolutely despise mobile gaming, grab it. It's 100% free, and I think you'll find a lot of good and enjoyment in it. Yeah. And if you don't, it was free, you know?
You can't argue with free.
Right.
Well, let's jump in.
Unless if you're Fortnite, then...
Oh, what were you saying?
I said unless if you're Fortnite, then free is still too high.
Wow. Well, let's jump into our two topics of the show. I feel like we should do The Witcher first, because that's going to be a lot of me talking, and Star Wars is going to be a lot of you talking, and you've just talked a lot about Bastion, so that'll give us a nice...
Yeah.
Give you a little breather. I think you should watch The Witcher, though, Steven. I think you would enjoy it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Witcher on Netflix is here. It's happening. It dropped on the 20th. I have 1.5 episodes left in the show.
How many episodes were in the season?
I want to say 8. Let me verify that, because I'm pretty sure that's right. It is 8, they're hour-long episodes. I know that because I remember when I first started one, and I was looking at everything. I was like, oh man, this is a lot of time to be watching an episode. It is 8 episodes, so 8 hours of watching.
Yeah,
it's really, really good. I highly recommend it just as a Netflix recommendation, just outright. I recommend it. It's good. If you're a fan of The Witcher or you played The Witcher games, I highly, highly recommend it. It does a really good job, I think, of melding kind of the expectations of people coming from the video game but still telling the story of the books, right? Because none of the video games that I know of are canonical. Like, they all happen kind of outside of the books. But this, obviously, the show is based off of the books. And this season specifically is based off the first book, The Last Wish. And I haven't finished that book. But it's funny to me how much I'm about halfway through that book. They put a lot of the front half in there. So if I finished the book, I'm sure I'd be like, oh man, this is the rest of it. Like, I really thought I would miss, or that they would skip over a lot of stuff, or not even that they would skip over, but like that after like episode 1 or 2, I would be so far behind in the book where they are in the story. But they have a really, really nice pace. They are taking time with these characters. Like the first episode introduces you to Geralt and Ciri. And the first episode is the perfect, like, if you had one story to just like, who is this Geralt guy? This episode 1 is the perfect story. It's how he got the name or the nickname, the Butcher of Blaviken. And it's basically, this is the first episode, so I'm going to just spoil it a little bit. But basically, he comes to a village after killing a monster, and he's trying to sell the monster or see if somebody had a contract for it. And what ends up happening is he gets kind of entangled in this argument between two higher powers, basically some political issues that are happening. And basically these two people hate each other and think that the other one is going to do great harm over time. And so they believe that both parties believe that the lesser evil would be for Geralt to kill the other one. And Geralt says this line that's in the trailers and stuff. You've probably heard it about where he says, evil is evil, lesser, greater, middling, like evil's just evil, you know? And so he's just like, I'm not gonna get involved. But his hand kind of gets forced, and he ends up going, because his hand was forced, he ends up messing things up more than if he had just gotten involved in the front end. And he gets the name the Butcher of Blaviken because he ended up butchering a lot of people. Anyway, and so he hates that name. He carries like a piece of one of the people that I say that sounds weird. He carries this brooch from one of the people he killed that day to like remind him like not to get involved and like to just, you know what I mean? So it's a really great character setup. I mentioned this on the stream last night. I played a little bit of Witcher. But they do the other thing that I'm really enjoying, the books, again, so far as I've read, have all been from the perspective of Geralt. Or you know, maybe Dandelion, which is the bard that follows Geralt around. In the show, his name is Jaskier or something like that. Jasker. Anyway, it could, you know, I always kind of interpreted the books as what Dandelion writes about. But anyway, they're all from the perspective of Geralt. And so the show is nice because we're seeing Ciri's perspective, Yennefer of Vinderberg's perspective, and then Geralt's perspective. And so it's really nice to kind of see what Yennefer's going through and what Ciri's going through while Geralt is doing a different thing. And it's just really well done. Like, this is kind of a spoiler for people, but like you don't realize at first, but each perspective is happening at a different timeline. Okay. And like you never really know how far away they are, because Geralt, because he's a mutant, can live hundreds of years. Like he doesn't age quite the same and has a prolonged life. Yennefer, being a sorceress, she also doesn't age and will live for an extended amount of time. And then Ciri is a younger version. You know, most people are familiar with her being like an adult in the video games. She's a child in the show, and so she's in a completely different time than Yennefer and Geralt are at the beginning. Eventually, they all kind of collide. But they do a really good job of just like taking their time and like developing the characters. Like I have such a better perspective of who Yennefer is and what her motives are and why she wants what she does, because they've spent so much time with her. We see her in the beginning. Like, have you seen any of the trailers, Steven?
No.
So in the trailers, Yennefer is like deformed. She's got like spina bifida or something, like some sort of spine deformity. And I remember at first I was like, what is happening here? I don't understand. I didn't realize that that's how she was. She was deformed, but through magic, she became beautiful. And so like there's a sacrifice that has to come with that. And this is another nice thing that I think you would appreciate, Stephen, but like magic in this world, it comes with a price. That's an Once Upon a Time bit I didn't even mean to do, but magic comes with a price. So I think it was the second episode, they demonstrate a bunch of sorceresses like testing their power. And the teacher just asks them to do a spell that'll lift a rock. And they all just start saying the phrase, and one of the girls, it lifts, but then her hand rots off her body. And the teacher's like, this is a great demonstration. Magic comes with a price. And so she was like, she picks up a flower and kills the flower, says the magic word, and then the rock lifts, and it's like, the energy transference, whatever. So I don't know. It's just really good. It's really, really good. They take a lot of time with Yennefer and Geralt, and Ciri too. Ciri, I don't really see I don't feel like I know Ciri very well. I feel like Ciri is kind of on this journey where she's trying to figure out who she is. Whereas Yennefer, her whole journey, her arc is kind of, she starts from a place of weakness. She fights for a place of power and regrets what she gives up to get that power. And so, anyway. But she and Geralt don't run into each other until episode 6 or 5 of 8.
Wow.
So you get 4 or 5 solid episodes with the characters by themselves developing.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have guessed.
I know, right? You would think. And that's what I'm saying. They are taking their time and really just letting you soak up all this stuff that's happening. So I don't know if they are signed for a season 2 yet or not. I've seen article headlines that are Witcher ending explained, how it sets up season 2. So obviously I want to say, I know early on the runners were saying they are prepared for 6 or 7 seasons, which is how many books there are right now, which I don't think he's writing anymore, but I don't know. Anyway, it's really, really good. I've seen some I haven't read any of the reviews about the show yet. Once I'm done, I'm gonna kind of backtrack and see what other people thought. Yeah. I've heard though some kind of mixed reviews, but I don't know what they are not liking. I mean, one of my fears going in after seeing some of the trailers was, are the monsters gonna look campy? Is this just not gonna look good? Yeah. And I mean, for a Netflix show, I think it's pretty great.
Okay.
I don't know that it's on a Game of Thrones level. It might be just below that, but it's not far off, I don't think. Nothing. I haven't seen anything that just made me go, ugh, no, I don't want to. That's too far. That's too weird. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, there is a goat man in episode 3. That he's really weird looking, and I mean that from a CGI standpoint as well. But I don't know. It's a show. You know what I mean? You kind of just have to go with that. And I don't know if other people are complaining about this, but it is a very I don't know if just calling it politics is the right word, but there's a lot of politics and kind of like Game of Thrones is very much it's not all battles and all action. It's more conversations that people are having. Right. And this is very much like that, but there is a lot of action and stuff. So I don't know. I'm a big Witcher fan, so I'm really enjoying it. If you're a big Witcher fan, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I did mention this on the podcast as well, or on the live stream earlier too. If you don't know anything about The Witcher and you came into this show and were just I'll watch this, whatever. I think people would be very confused early on about what is a Witcher and what all that comes with. Right. Because I don't think it's ever explicitly explained that Geralt can gain additional abilities by drinking potions. And he uses Witchers don't have magic, but they use these things called signs to do kind of minor magic. He's got Ard, which is a sign that basically is a force push. He's got Igni, which he hasn't used on the show yet, which I think is a little weird, but which is a fire. He's got Quinn, which is like a protection. He's got Axie, which is a like kind of a. These are not the Jedi's or the drones you're looking for, droids you're looking for. And then there's another one that's like a trap, and he definitely hasn't used that one. But like the first time he uses Ard, he just does it. Like it's just bam, and a creature flies back, and I was like, oh cool, Ard. But I have to imagine somebody who knows nothing is just like, does he have force powers? Like, what is this? And there's one episode where he gets in kind of a really intense thing is happening, and Geralt's like trying to stop the situation, and he goes for it once, like just kind of on his own strength, and he gets thrown back, and then he grabs a bottle and just chugs it, kind of almost like Pete, what's his name? Who takes the spinach? You know what I'm talking about? Popeye, that's it. He kind of does like almost a Popeye moment where he just pops a bottle and ding, I'm strong, and like pushes forward. So, but they don't explain like that's what Witchers do. That's how Witchers work.
Yeah.
They do some of that, some of those subtle things. Like a lot of people will say things like, "Is it true that you guys don't have emotion?" You know, or like you can't feel anything. And Geralt just doesn't comment on it, but it's like, oh, that's why Geralt's kind of real melatonin and doesn't laugh and whatever. So I don't know. Henry Cavill.
What they may be going for is
Henry Cavill.
What they may be going
awesome.
for is that the idea of The Witcher itself, they want it to be kind of that shrouded in mystery kind of perspective, to where when you're told something, it's through the lens of someone who themselves do not know like what's real and what's not, so that they make The Witcher more of like a myth.
Yeah.
Like we don't like they like, you're not knowing what they're capable of makes them more interesting.
Right.
Almost. They may be taking that perspective. I don't know. I haven't seen anything for it.
I think that's what they're going for, but I feel like they should have explained Ard and the signs, because that when that first happens, I mean, literally it comes out of nowhere. And I was like, oh yeah, cool, great. But I have to imagine, like you don't know anything. So like, I don't know. And I've just explained it to you. I would love to hear somebody's perspective of like, oh yeah, I didn't know what this was. And the first time that happened, I was like, what? And I still don't know what that is. I still don't know how he can do that. So anyway, I digress. It's great. Go watch it. I highly recommend it. The season as a whole has been awesome. I mean, I haven't gotten to the end yet, but yeah, I'm sure. I don't know what they could do in the next episode and a half that I've got left that would just make me be sour on the whole situation. But anyway, it's good. It's really good.
So
let's talk about something that's maybe not so good.
What'd you think of Rise of Skywalker?
So do you want me to give my thoughts first? My thoughts are probably a little bit more tame.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll preface this with I started watching Star Wars in the second prequel. So this, I don't think I saw that. Well, maybe I did. The second prequel was probably the first thing I saw of Star Wars. And then I obviously went back, watched the first one, watched the third one in theaters. And then really it wasn't until Force Awakens came out that I actually sat down with a buddy and we went through the originals. And obviously the originals are much tamer and more, practical effects stuff. So some might say that they're not as entertaining from a visual, like things happening standpoint, at least to me, just because I'm used to, like, at that point, I was used to like Marvel movies and that sort of thing. So before the sequels trilogy, I would have said, I liked the prequels better because that's what I grew up on, and it was just more action packed. anyway, all that to say, like, in general, I am a fan of Star Wars and the concept of Star Wars and the world of Star Wars. But I don't know that I've, like, saying that, I don't know that any of the movies I've ever, like, just loved. You know what I mean? I just really like the ideas that are in Star Wars. That being said, I enjoyed this movie, Rise of Skywalker. I thought it was very entertaining. I liked where we landed and how it all kind of came together. Spoilers are okay, right? We'll try to be.
I figure we would talk a little bit about our general thoughts and then talk about spoilers after I've talked.
All right. I'll let general thoughts.
So the people wary of them can listen to
top level thoughts and
discussion.
I thought it was entertaining. I liked it a lot. I liked, like I said, I liked where we ended up. I thought probably the first half of the movie or so was a little rough around the edges, just trying to, and I kind of get that as somebody who is an editor and creates things. Like, the hardest thing for me is to start something, because you want to do the beginning so well and have a great first introduction. But a lot of times I feel like I get stuck in that first 30 seconds or just what can I put here to get us going. And I think in general, Star Wars suffers that a little bit because they've always done the crawl, which I'm fine with the crawl. It was an innovative thing at the time, but like, I feel like every episode has to have that explanation at the beginning of where we are. And
right.
I feel like nowadays we could just show us that, you know what I mean?
So it's funny you say that, because like, I think there is validity to that with some Star Wars movies. I think that the ones that have the strongest start, because I do agree that for me personally, like, the beginning is always the hardest. Mm-hmm. Just getting through that first blockade of how do I start?
How do I set this up? But, right.
Yeah. But actually, I would say that the movies that have the best beginning are probably episodes 4, 5, and 3. Or I guess 3, 4, and 5. I guess I could say that in order. The others I can understand. Maybe not so much. But like, those I feel like had a really strong beginning. Yeah. Even with the crawl.
Well, and I guess for this one specifically, what I mean is, obviously we've all seen the trailers. We all heard Palpatine's voice, and what does that mean? Is he back? What is that? Whatever. And so this movie starts off with the scroll, and it's just like a broadcast has gone across.
The dead speak. That's the first line of the crawl.
Saying that he's sent out a broadcast that he's back and he's ready to F people up, whatever. And it's just like,
we need to talk about that for a second, because like the broadcast. Sorry to interrupt you, but this just needs to be said. The broadcast, because the crawl basically says the dead speak. The Resistance has detected a broadcast containing the voice of Emperor Palpatine or something. Two things. One, if you had imagine you're a Star Wars fan. You've loved all of the movies, but you're at the point, because a lot of people are like this, because trailers give away too much. Imagine you're that Star Wars fan that's seen every single movie and loves the franchise, and you say, I'm not going to watch the trailers for Rise of Skywalker. I want to go in completely blind so that I can just,
experience it,
not be spoiled on anything. And then the opening crawl is where you learn that Palpatine is the villain.
Right.
How pissed off would you be? Like, it's just like, oh, hey, yeah, Palpatine's back and he's the villain. And you're just like, oh, okay, what's this broadcast? And we never hear it. It's not in the movie.
Right.
It's in Fortnite.
Yeah.
That's the only place, to my knowledge, that you can hear literally the starting pistol that is for the plot of this movie is only accessible in Fortnite.
And I don't think, like, you certainly don't need to hear the broadcast to get that. I don't think, I don't think having that broadcast in there would have really helped anything. Well, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I wish Palpatine had been hinted at in The Last Jedi. You know what I mean? Like, yep. if the last 30 seconds before credit rolls in Last Jedi had somehow been just a little hint of Palpatine, then coming into this scroll where it's like, the dead speaks, Palpatine's alive.
The dead speak.
Like that.
Well, you know why he wasn't teased in Last Jedi, right?
Did they not have it? Did they not lock it down that he could come back yet, or what?
They didn't. That wasn't their plan. Rian Johnson was the writer and director for Last Jedi, and he said, screw you to any plans that they had already laid. So Last Jedi ends, and Disney is left with the pieces that they put in place, like Snoke, Rey's origin, whatever else, Luke. All of that was gone. And so Disney basically was like, okay, well, we have to start over with the third movie, and it's the last movie. So Palpatine ended up being the best they could do. Which is why it feels so rushed, which is why the pacing of the movie feels so rushed, because they have to do the legwork of 3 movies to tell a story in one movie that also has to conclude the story that it sets up in the same movie.
Right.
It's a mess. Sorry.
I mean, I don't know that the pace was bad. I felt like it moved well enough. It was. I didn't feel like I was just getting jerked around. But anyway, all that to say, as a whole, I wish they had a Kevin Feige or somebody to say, "Hey guys, here's what we're doing. Here's the story arc. JJ, you can direct this one. Brian, you can direct that one, and JJ, you can direct this one. But this is what we're doing." And they had I wish they had just kind of followed that thread all the way through. Whereas, like you're saying, it feels like JJ did one thing, Brian said, "Screw you, Jay, I want this," and then JJ came back and was like, "What the F, Brian?" And just had to twist his whole thing to work. But I don't know.
So.
I thought it was very entertaining. I enjoyed it. My biggest complaint is there wasn't enough Baby Yoda in the thing. But Babu Frick may have saved it.
Babu Frick, though. Which, fun fact.
He was pretty good.
Fun fact that I learned last night. Babu Frick is voiced by Moaning Myrtle from Harry Potter.
Wow.
Anyway, so about the whole you wish they had a Kevin Feige thing. They do. They do. And her name is Kathleen Kennedy, and she sucks at her job.
Whoever it was, they didn't tell Brian he had to stick to the script. So
Kathleen Kennedy is this woman who is like the head of Disney Star Wars, basically. She is pretty incompetent when it comes to understanding what Star Wars is. And she's the person who, I don't remember if it was for a press junket, whatever, with Force Awakens, Last Jedi, or Rise of Skywalker, but she went on record saying that, well, it was hard making sequels to the original Star Wars trilogy because we just have no source material that we're pulling from. When there had been, like,
hundreds.
Over 2 decades of books, video games, comics that all told amazing stories. But she, I guess, didn't know that because she doesn't know what a Star Wars is.
It's a Star Wars.
But yeah, she sucks. And I hope she loses her job.
Well, isn't Kevin Feige about to start directing
I don't know if that was confirmed or just rumored.
I feel like it was confirmed. I'm gonna tell us your thoughts. I'm gonna look that up.
Okay.
Because you're gonna have a lot of thoughts.
So I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna continue with the thread of no spoilers, but this movie. Jake said the pacing didn't feel too bad, but to me, I felt like it was extremely rushed.
Feige is confirmed to be developing a new Star Wars movie, by the way.
Oh, good. So she's definitely going to lose her job then. So the pace, like the first 15 to 20 minutes, there's like 8 different planets we go to.
Mm-hmm.
And the editing is bad. Like just from a technical standpoint, there was one shot, and this is probably an exaggeration, but the fact that I noticed this shot specifically when I was barely paying attention, where they are flying towards a planet,
mm-hmm.
does the wipe, then it shows the ship landed for like less than a second, and then it wipes to them walking away from the ship. Like that kind of editing is all over the place because it feels like rather than taking the time to let a story and its beats breathe,
mm-hmm.
they are on a time crunch and they're just like doing the checklist. Like, okay, well, we explained Snoke, check. Okay, we are explaining why Rey isn't a Mary Sue even though she is, check. Like all this stuff, and it just it felt not only rushed, but like it was them just making, like in crisis mode, trying to fix the bottom line. And I'm not saying that everything is Rian Johnson's fault.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. But he is very heavily to blame because I understand. And of course, this would turn into me ranting about Last Jedi because it's not even the same movie. But I understand being attached to a project and wanting to make it your own.
Mm-hmm.
But there was just a level of negligence isn't even the word because like he knew what he was doing. Just disregard for what you're attached to. Because there's a difference between being hired to make a Marvel movie. Like, let's say Ant-Man. You're hired to make Ant-Man, and you're basically told these are the story beats, and you're like, okay, cool. I want to do these story beats in a heist film. And that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty good. I actually really liked Ant-Man. But Rian Johnson, what we're made to believe was like, okay, those are the story beats. Got it. How about I just make a movie that's about making everyone realize that they were wrong and stupid for making fan theories so that I can get the last laugh. Because shocking people is what makes a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
So what JJ was ultimately left with, even though this is some of JJ Abrams' worst work, was nothing. Like, what was he going to do?
Mm-hmm.
What? And so before I go into like the specifics of what I didn't like story-wise, I don't think I hate this movie as much as I hate Last Jedi because it was at least entertaining. I will agree that it was entertaining to a superficial level, but it had a reason to be as bad as it was,
Mm-hmm.
whereas Last Jedi chose to mess up as bad as it did.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Just to kind of put a bow on the overall thoughts, I like this movie better than Last Jedi. I think probably I would say I liked Force Awakens, this movie, Rise of Skywalker, and then Last Jedi. It's probably way down on my list, but like of this trilogy, it's the one I liked the least. But anyway,
so. I guess we should just go ahead and talk spoilers because there's a lot of my thoughts as to why this movie is bad have to do with
spoilers,
specific scenes and spoilers, and so
all right.
spoilers.
We're spoiling
graphic.
Rise of Skywalker starting now.
Okay, so
why the
I'm just
hell
gonna start from the top.
is she a Skywalker at the end of the movie if she's a Palpatine? You know what I mean? That's what I want to know.
Do you want me to be honest?
Do you think that the original plan was for her to be a Skywalker, and then Brian was like, "Haha, your parents are no one," and then they were like, "Well, how do we do this? Palpatine, bam."
I think the original plan focused more on Kylo.
Okay.
I think that he was going to be a much more poignant redemption, and it wouldn't be just Vader all over again, where it's, aha, I'm redeemed, and it cost me my life.
I liked where we ended with Kylo, though. I did like.
I did not, and I'm going to explain why in a
go ahead. You're going to have more thoughts than I will.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the reason, and just disclaimer, guys. I've seen a lot of people talk about Star Wars. Really, it's just a super toxic community right now. You're either part of one extreme, which is The Last Jedi is the greatest Star Wars movie ever. I love having my expectations subverted. This is why it's a masterpiece. Oh, it's so interesting. Anyone who dislikes it's an idiot. That's one extreme. And then there's the other extreme, which a lot of them are part of what call themselves the fandom menace, which is basically a community that sticks by the prequels, which to that degree I am. I'm a person that sticks by the prequels. They were goofy and cheesy at parts, but they told a story that added a lot to the universe, so they have a reason to exist, and I found a lot of enjoyment in them. But there are other people that exist within that community are just like, they're so quick to just cry out, oh, Disney did this because this and feminist agenda and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not one of those people. But that being said, I'm about to sound like one of those people. So the reason probably that that she ended as a Skywalker is because there was this push, like a theme of the movie that was not subtle at all, is identity. That pig alien child comes up to her in the desert and is like, here, have a necklace. What's your name? Rey. And your last name? Like, obviously setting up the theme of, who am I? I don't know. I don't have a last name. And so it kind of felt to me, and I'm not, and this is just one way to interpret it, which I guess you could say it was subtle in that sense. I don't know. But one way it felt like they were going for with me was this whole idea of, you basically can identify as whatever you want in 2019. That whole kind of thing of identity, like finding your identity, not being afraid of who you are, and openness to who you feel like you truly are. So at the end of the movie, she decides that she's a Skywalker, not a Palpatine. And we're supposed to just accept that, because in the society we live in, you can say you are whatever you want to be, I guess. That's kind of how it felt to me.
All right.
To me, it felt a little forced. To others, it may feel poignant. I don't know. But that's not even here or there with me. That's just something I observed, and that's my analysis. That wouldn't have even been mentioned on my list of critiques, even though I did think that it was really dumb, the old woman doing exactly what the little pig child did. Apparently, in this era of the galaxy, everyone's a stickler about your last name. Who are you? Rey. Rey who? Like,
while we're so on that last scene, what did you think of her yellow lightsaber?
I could see the price tag placed right next to, like, I could just see it in my mind. Hey kids, you could get this at Savvy's Workshop at Galaxy's Edge for $200.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
Well, that being said, sure.
Yeah.
Her lightsaber being yellow doesn't really make much sense because if you know anything about the rebooted lore of kyber crystals, Disney really wanted Star Wars to be Harry Potter when they first acquired it. So they, instead of how it was in EU, where the Jedi hunted down their crystal of choice, now, and this is all based on my understanding. Stowe, if you're watching this podcast, fact check me in the chat, which I know you can. But now the crystal chooses the user, and the colors usually mean something. Green is representative of ones attuned with the Force more so. Blue is attuned more to those who are your typical Jedi that doesn't know what their specialty is yet, or ones that fight at the front lines. Basically, your do-all Jedi. And purple is those who can use both sides of the Force with relative, while not really corrupting themselves, I believe. Yellow is reserved for the Jedi Sentinels,
right?
Or at least the Temple Guard,
right?
And we were led to believe that the Temple, like at the time of the Clone Wars, for example, yellow was a really rare color that we never saw in any Jedi's lightsaber that was not a Temple Guard. And even the Temple Guard, their sabers were lightsaber pikes that were given to the ones on duty as Temple Guard, basically as like they have that saber while they're on guard duty. They don't own it. They don't create it. It's a gun they're given, basically.
Gotcha.
So the fact that her lightsaber is yellow doesn't make canonical sense according to what Disney retconned only a few years ago.
Right.
So that's my thought on the color of her lightsaber. The design, kind of cool, I guess.
We really don't see
just
much.
felt right. Yeah, we assume that it's made out of her staff,
right? Which
again, that theme of
watching the movie, seeing her fight with the staff early on, and then seeing again her Sith form with the dual staff that folds out, whatever. As I was watching that, I was like, it makes so much more sense for her to be like a lightsaber staff wielder,
right? Which comes back to that concept of identity. At the beginning of the movie, Rey feels more comfortable with a stick. I'll talk about why that's a problem in a second. She feels more comfortable fighting with a stick than she does Luke's lightsaber, and then we see the vision of who she could be. She was being tempted with the idea of being a Sith queen, and she sees the weapon she could have, which seems more fitting for her. So it was a part of her temptation. And so in the end, she's able to accept her identity as someone who fights with a staff. So I don't know. To me, it really did just feel like a commercial, though, the lightsaber thing, because it was just like, oh, look, here's her lightsaber. She flicks it on. Oh, look at that pretty color. Savvy's Workshop, $200.
Yeah.
Like it felt like that to me.
Right.
But
I've detracted from points you actually wanted to make long enough. So go ahead. What were your?
Yeah. So I'm just gonna try to start from the top.
Okay.
And just name things that I didn't like and why I didn't like them. And I'll talk about like I'll wrap it up with like why I think this movie was just not good. So right off the bat, the opening crawl thing, Palpatine being revealed through it, and us never hearing the broadcast, that's bad. That's a mistake because, again, the whole thing about people who didn't watch the trailer, like that's a huge missed opportunity in suspense. We are literally dropped into this thing and we feel like we have whiplash because it's like, wait, what? Palpatine? Oh, Kylo is over there. Oh, the Millennium Falcon's here. Like it can't be focused. And I think that including the transmission within the movie would have been useful. And I don't think you needed it, but it would have helped because we don't really get much context for Palpatine's master plan. We just know, I guess, what he's going to do, but we don't get, like, it would have been a much easier way to explain, like, what he was going for. And it would have been less of a mustache twirling, conniving villain moment of, this is what I'm doing. Before I kill you, here's my master plan. Like, it would have, they literally had it, and they gave it to Fortnite instead of the movie. I don't get it. So we see the Millennium Falcon, Poe, Finn, Chewie, this big alien thing named Claude are there, who is never really addressed. He's just kind of there. And they get information about a spy, all this stuff. Then they're trying to get away. They jump to light speed. Getting ahead of myself. Kylo Ren's TIE fighter, one of the first things I noticed, it could jump to light speed. Like it could, which in Star Wars lore, unless if, again, Stowe, fact check me. I already kind of asked you to do this though. TIE fighters can't do that because TIE fighters are very cheaply made aircraft that are pretty much just used for like ground assault, like, you know, strafing runs, taking bombarding from above, or dogfights. They are primarily for dogfights. They send them out like a swarm of wasps when starships are attacked to take out the fighters. They don't have shield generators. They don't have torpedoes. They only have engines that can make them fast and just 2 blasters. Kylo Ren's TIE fighter can jump to hyperspeed. And then I was like, okay, you know what? It's a special TIE fighter. Sure. I'm okay with that. It makes sense. Then literally the next scene, the Millennium Falcon's getting pursued by like 4 TIE fighters, and they start doing like not just jumping to hyperspeed, but I forget what they called it.
Hyper skipping or something like that.
Yeah, it was it was something skipping.
Light skipping?
And light skipping, maybe. Yeah, that was probably light skipping. And the TIE fighters are light skipping too. Like flawlessly, like keeping up with the Millennium Falcon in these little cheap spacecraft. And they looked like standard TIE fighters, which to me as a fan was just like, okay, that's wrong, but sure. I guess if you need it to have this action scene, go ahead. So that was a little nitpick, but the scene was fine. It was kind of scattered, but it was fine. Then we get a scene of Rey training on whatever planet that was. Insert forest planet number 5. Did they ever tell us what planet that was?
If they probably said it, there's no way I would have caught it and remembered it. So I have no idea. Yeah.
So, and I'm getting ahead of myself again because the Kylo stuff was so scattered. Kylo talks to the Emperor, and Kylo's like, "Oh, Snoke said this," and Palpatine's like, "I was Snoke," and then it shows he has like a Snoke farm and he's like, "Look at all my Snokes." And so we're just like, okay, Snoke was a clone. Okay, well, that could be cool. Maybe we'll see like an army of Force-sensitive Snokes and Palpatine's pulling the strings. Nope. Never seen him again. Like, it's just like, I have a clone army of Snokes, maybe. But he never uses them. It was literally just, like, the first 30 minutes or so of this movie is them doing a checklist of how can we make Last Jedi even more pointless. And that's what they did with that.
To linger on your Snoke farm thing just another second. One of the like biggest WTF questions like that IGN does. One of the questions was, how did Palpatine get enough people? Like who's crewing all of these Star Destroyers? Because I forget. It's like thousands that it takes to man one of those, and he's got hundreds, if not, close to 1,000. And
yep. And again, that falls in line with the problem of Disney Star Wars, is that they don't really pay attention to the details. They don't care about the why.
Mm-hmm.
How did the First Order, which was the remnants of the crumbling empire who had retreated away from the war, how did they build the freaking Starkiller base, which was like 8 Death Stars in one? How did they get such an army? Like, we don't know, because Disney doesn't care. They don't want to make these stories make sense, which is a point I'm going to get to later, talking about the Force, which was probably my biggest complaint with this movie. So we get that scene with Rey, and she's training. And this scene, again, you can really see their hand. They're trying to shut down the argument of people like me who think that Rey was overly powerful, or a Mary Sue, which the definition of a Mary Sue is someone for which the plot bends. And so Rey, like people with opinions like mine would say, how is Rey able to be at a tier that Luke ended his trilogy on in her first movie? She has no training. She just found out that she has the Force. And yet she's kicking butt. So this scene with Rey in the obstacle course very much felt to me like, look, see, she's training. That's how she's so good. She's training. Which I didn't have a problem with the scene as a scene. It was fine. It was well shot, all that kind of stuff, whatever. But I couldn't separate the intention with the scene itself. And then she has trouble using the lightsaber. And then she's like, okay, I'll grab this stick and break this instead. And then she says to Leia, one of these days I'll learn your brother's lightsaber. But she used it really effectively in the previous 2 movies. And then after she says that line, she's using it super effectively for the rest of the movie.
She said earned, not learned.
Okay, that makes more sense.
I think. I heard earned.
Still,
I have not earned this yet.
Okay. Still, though, they show us her not like fumbling around with it. She's not as good as she was, which is the problem with a character like this, is that the plot bends for her, and it can be both ways. If she's so good here, why is she not good here? You know, like you get inconsistencies. And that's why it felt to me like they were trying to humble her. What else? They, fast forwarding to like the desert place, the whole quicksand scene. Well, actually I'm getting ahead of myself. When they were on the sand skiff things, I thought that scene was all right. It was a fun action scene, which again, this kind of defines the movie for me, is that I was entertained, but everything was wrong. But whatever. There's a line where the stormtroopers, like 2 of them, fly on jetpacks. And then they say the comedic line where C-3PO is like, they can fly now. And then Finn's like, they fly now? And then Poe goes, they fly now. And as soon as they said that, I was just like, guys, jetpack troopers are literally a part of the Imperial military, and they have been ever since it was the Republic. Finn, you are literally a stormtrooper. You know that they fly. Why are you stupid? And like, it was just either whoever wrote that scene didn't have enough knowledge of Star Wars to know that that's a thing that, you know, Boba Fett had a jetpack years before this movie would have taken place. Jango Fett, clone troopers. So either they didn't know any of that, or they just didn't care and they wanted to get a cheap laugh instead.
Yeah.
Again, it was wrong. The quicksand scene where they're falling in, and Finn just goes, Rey, I have to tell you something, and then never tells her for the entire movie.
So what, Steven, I'm just curious, what do you think he was trying to tell her?
I don't know, because I don't know these characters.
Okay.
They have no identity. I love you, maybe, but
say that again.
I love you, maybe, but Finn had chemistry with like every woman in this movie.
And Poe. So,
and Poe.
I thought that's what it was that he was trying to tell her I love you before they died. J.J. Abrams has come out and confirmed that what he was trying to tell her is that he was force sensitive. Because that makes sense.
That's the stupidest thing. Okay.
Like, I totally get, like, and especially if you look at the last half of the movie, they're really trying to sell you, and I think even in the beginning, that Finn is force sensitive. Because at the end of the movie, he is, like, sensing all kinds of things happening. But why would that be the one thing you wanted to tell her before you went in the quicksand? Like, why would that be the one thing?
It's the perfect example of, like, this movie. Because it's almost like they were falling and Finn was just like, oh, duh, I've got to tell her I'm force sensitive. Hey, Ray. Never mind. Like, we'll get it later. Like, it's so distracted and so rushed that they just, like, try to fit so much in and it just doesn't work. And the whole Finn force sensitive thing, like, yeah, they were trying to really drive that home. But the way they do it, and again, this is kind of in my final thoughts, the way they do it feels like, yeah, sure, they're trying to say, oh, maybe Finn's force sensitive, but the way it comes off is we just need Finn to look force sensitive right now to move the plot forward. And it wouldn't be so bad that, Ray, I have to tell you this, that wouldn't be so bad. Like, if they just forgot about it, that one time, it's just like, okay, characters forget about things all the time. That's fine. They reference that line like 4 times. Like the whole Poe being like, oh, you guys are keeping secrets now? You're not going to tell me anything? Like, they keep poking at it. Just being like, hey, it's literally the rule of, like, Chekhov's gun. Which Star Wars under Disney does not abide by at all. Where it's like, if you present an idea in such a way to where you're very much drawing attention to it, that idea better have payoff by the end of the story. It did not. So that was a thing. Then Chewie gets kidnapped, and maybe I just missed where the switch could have happened. But how was Chewie not in that ship that exploded?
There were 2 carriers, and you see 2 when they're loading him up. But how Finn mistaked which one was up in the air, I don't know.
It felt so dumb.
Well, and it was weird because, like, Lee Alston looked over at me and she was just like, is Chewie dead? And I was like, no, because there's a shot in the trailer of him and Lando flying the Millennium Falcon, and that hasn't happened yet.
And we know now, we know that you have to have seen the trailer to see this movie, because that's the better place to show you that Palpatine's going to be in it.
Anyway.
Oh, my God. So they think Chewie's dead. After Rey uses Sith lightning, she sneezes, I guess, and uses Sith lightning when she's trying to use force pull.
She hit the wrong button.
And she hit the wrong button. Oh, I completely forgot about, and see, this is why I should have written this stuff down. Forgot about a huge problem. The whole reason Kylo's there, and they're able to have that tug of war thing, is because they now have, I was calling it Force Skype call, but I heard someone call it Force Time, like FaceTime, and now I can't not call it that.
They are they are a Force dyad, and so they have a special connection.
That's not how it works.
I'm just telling you that is what Disney is calling it, and is explaining.
There is such a thing as, Force connections. We see Luke and Leia have a strong connection, and we're led to believe, oh wow, that's a big deal because they're twins. They've got a strong connection through birth. Or the way that Vader was able to sense Luke on the shuttle landing on Endor in Episode 6, that was like, oh wow, he can sense he's here. But that makes sense because Vader's really powerful and that's his son. So there's a connection. But now in Disney Star Wars, it's like everyone can have a Force connection with everyone. And then they take it a step further to where, and Last Jedi is the one that introduced this concept, and it's a stupid concept, unless if they did it in Force Awakens and I forgot about it, where this Force connection means that you can literally break reality and see the person you're connected to and have a full face-to-face conversation. But then Rise of Skywalker takes it a step further, where Kylo reaches out and grabs the necklace that Rey literally got 5 seconds ago and literally force teleports it into his hand and hands it to an officer. Is like, quick, scan this and tell me what planet it's from. And she's like, I've done it. It's from this planet. That's where they are. Okay, the plot's telling us to go there. Let's hit it. And like, again, that's a great example of the Force just being what the writer needs it to be. When you're creating a magic system in writing, you really have to have guidelines. There are a lot of systems out there that are vague, but the vague ones usually do it in such a way to where there's at least a cost to doing great things, or like. We aren't led to believe that this vague magic could just break the plot at any second. But with the Force, what it is now, it's a system of magic that can do anything, anytime, for whatever reason. And what you end up having, I hate the Force now, by the way, because Disney has turned it from this interesting mystical energy that we don't fully understand, but we know influences things, to it's literally the writer's voice. Where the writer says, oh, well, Kylo needs to know where Rey is. Well, he can force teleport from their Force time call now because it gets us to scene 2.
Right.
Force sensing is now really easy. And anyone can do it because we need to know that Chewie is on that Imperial starship above whatever the planet was called. Because Rey needs the plot to tell her, go there. Then Force healing, we'll get to that in a second. Force healing actually exists. It is an ability that Jedi are capable of. That's not the problem, but I'll get to the
problem is that they used it like 800 times in this movie.
The problem was that Kylo used it to bring Rey back from the dead. She was dead, okay? And I know we're skipping around a lot, but we're just going to go ahead and talk about this now. At the end of the movie, Kylo pointlessly shows up for his redemption arc just to stand there with a lightsaber for a money shot, then get the life drained out of him, then get thrown into a hole. Kylo literally contributed nothing to the final showdown. Which sucked, because Kylo was the closest thing this trilogy had to an interesting character. And then Rey does her whole thing. And then Kylo comes back after Rey is for some reason dying, and she's dead. She is dead at this point. And you could tell me that, oh, J.J. Abrams came out and said that Rey wasn't dead. She was on the brink of death, but her skin was pale. Her eyes were just glazed. She was motionless. She was dead. And so Kylo comes up, touches her, and brings her back to life with his life force. Here's the problem with that. In episode 3, in one of the scenes that pretty much anyone could tell you is a really good scene, regardless of how they feel about the prequels, Palpatine tells Anakin the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, a great, powerful Sith that has the ability to cheat death, to give life to the dead. Anakin ends up joining Palpatine because he keeps having these visions of Padme's going to die. Padme's going to die. I need to stop it. So why wouldn't he side with the guy who can keep his wife alive? Because Palpatine, I think it's confirmed that he was Plagueis's apprentice, so he has that power. That's a big deal. And now Kylo Ren brings Rey back from the dead for no reason. How does he do it? Because the plot needs him to. Because the plot needs us to like Rey more than Kylo Ren. It's stupid. It just, and I know that some people may be like, oh, it's just a movie. Oh, whatever got us to where Rey lives. And it's more of a catharsis that way. No, that's fine if you think so, but these are big problems because Star Wars is more than just, to me anyway, it's more than just the big space battles and the cool money shots and the lightsaber fights. It is a collection of rules and lore and a grander story that ties together. And when you're not going to adhere to the rules that we have been following all these years, you are not Star Wars. You're just a joke.
You're something else. You're a fan fiction.
You are a fan fiction that's calling yourself Star Wars. That Last Jedi did it. Rise of Skywalker did it. Force Awakens probably did it. That's just how it is. Anyway, so about halfway through the movie, I guess, Poe, Finn, and Chewie are held at gunpoint, and the movie remembers, oh yeah, there's a spy, and we need to, have them not die. So the way I described this to, I think I was telling Kat about the plot, was that imagine you're playing a D&D campaign. This entire scene on the Star Destroyer is a D&D campaign, and the players who are Poe, Finn, and Chewie have just critical failed everything to where they're being held at gunpoint by stormtroopers and Hux. And the dungeon master's just over there flipping through his book while he's saying that the stormtroopers are aiming their guns. He's just like, we can't let the campaign in. They've got to get out of here. And then he just goes, Hux yells, I'm the spy, and kills the stormtroopers. That's how that scene felt. It was so forced to where Hux was just used as a expendable plot point, and then gets killed immediately after. And his best reason for being the spy is, I don't care who wins. Kylo Ren just needs to lose.
So I thought that was an incredibly stupid line. And I totally get that he hates Kylo, but what? Why would he become a spy for the Resistance? Why not just plot to kill Kylo some other way? I don't know.
The best part of it is that, when I said Hux yells, I'm the spy, that was quoting. He literally shoots the stormtroopers and goes, I'm the spy!
Wow.
It's just so dumb. So then they go to this other Endor moon that's not the Endor moon from episode 6. It's where parts of the Death Star had crashed, which this is probably my favorite of the set pieces. I thought the imagery of the Death Star, both exterior and interior, was really cool.
That's also where we met my new favorite character in the Star Wars lore.
Yeah, what was her name? Action figure number
Fro
3.
With the
you
bow.
can buy Amazon.com. Fro with the bow. Which,
Fro with the bow.
I don't know why. It almost felt offensive to me that the movie seemed to feel the need to make the only other black person Finn's met another stormtrooper. I guess there's Lando. He was probably a stormtrooper at one point too.
I thought at the end of the movie that we were about to find out that this was Lando's long lost daughter that we had never known about.
Yeah. What was up with that line?
Someone said to me, I think it might have been Lee Allison, and she was just like, so that must be where the next movie's going. We're going to follow Lando and this chick.
So, I read an article, or I saw an article title that seems to say that it's a book tie-in, which, good job, Disney. So they meet what's her face. She's there to be another action figure to sell to kids. A lot of this movie is them just trying to push merchandise. And Rey impatiently is like, no, I'm going to the Death Star now. So she goes over there looking for the Sith Wayfinder so they can find Exegol, which is what this whole thing is about, because Exegol is where Palpatine is, I guess, and the fleet of Deus Ex Machinas. And so Rey goes on there, and Kylo finds her, beats her to the Wayfinder, crushes it, and they have a lightsaber fight that a lot of people are calling the best lightsaber fight in the trilogy, which I guess, but it's still pretty lame. Like the attention to detail is really cool. Like the VFX are great, solid. But I don't see why this would be the point, but they just looked tired the whole time. And like they were just, here's your lightsaber fight, I guess. And then meanwhile, it cuts back to Resistance Planet Forest Planet number 5. And Leia just is like, she kind of looks down for a second, and she's like, all right, and walks off. And then Maz Kanata, who literally, her entire role in this movie is basically that audience member that leans over to you and explains what just happened. Because Leia walks off looking all weak and stuff, and Maz just, I'm paraphrasing here. I am paraphrasing this one. But she looks at a nearby Resistance person, and Maz basically goes, well, she's going to go kill herself.
I didn't hear it like that, but okay.
That's how it came off to me, because it was just like, she said with like a smile, she was just like, she's going to go use the rest of her energy, and she's going to die. And I'm over here thinking, one, how does Leia know the exact moment she needs to go do the exact Force thing, which is a super risky gamble, because all she does is she uses her Force to reach out to Kylo and just go, ban.
Says one word.
And then it's enough to distract him, and then Rey stabs him. But how did Leia know to do that? Because the Force,
Steven,
the plot. Yeah, the plot told her, hey, Leia, it's your time to go die and do that thing. Okay. And you know what? I'm fine with the occasional, like, the Force does this thing, like the Force intervenes. Like Anakin in episode 2, getting the visions of his mother in trouble.
Right.
That was one. That was one in that movie. And it made sense, because it was like, okay, well, Anakin is clearly tied to destiny and fate, so the Force would send him somewhere that's going to put him on the path. That makes sense. And they did a lot more showing than they did telling. In this, it's just literally like, okay, I'm going to go do this thing, and they do it. So then Rey stabs Kylo and is immediately like, oh, let me fix that up for you. Force heals his chest wound, and is just like, okay, bye. I'm going to go put myself in exile now. Goes into his TIE fighter and flies off. Finn sees the TIE fighter, and correct me if I'm wrong here, he doesn't see the rest of the fight because he gets pushed far enough back, but he sees the TIE fighter take off, and he goes, Rey's gone. How did he know it was Rey? It was Kylo's TIE fighter.
I'm right there with you, because I was laughing that she just left them on that, like, cool, guys, you're on your own. Yeah. You got to swim back. You got to get whatever.
And so, like, because, again, the Force, the writer was like, oh, hey, guys, that's Rey. You're done here. Wrap it up. Go to Forest Planet number 5. And so that's what they do. But Kylo stays there and is just like, I don't know what to do. And then, of course, he has a vision of his father. I almost said Harrison Ford, because that's kind of how it felt. Han Solo. And here's the thing. They say that he's like a memory, but he talks to Kylo in such a way to where we haven't seen them talk before. They have the same conversation they had from Force Awakens, but Han's responses are different. And he has such an influence to where his advice changes Kylo's perspective. So what I'm telling you is that Han Solo's a Force ghost now. Because even though they can say he's not, he was a Force ghost. That's the role he was playing. Which in Star Wars Episode 1, Qui-Gon Jinn, before dying, we see him meditate. It's important because some were like, maybe he's healing, or maybe he can see what's coming and he's preparing himself for that. But then Episode 3 confirms that was Qui-Gon becoming the first Force ghost, at least in recent history. He was becoming one with the Force so that he could continue to train Obi-Wan on Tatooine after Episode 3, or speak with Yoda, or whatever else, influence things as a Force ally, like we see many characters do. And ever since then, we see Yoda does it, Obi-Wan does it, and both times it's in a place of meditation. Obi-Wan lets himself get hit in Episode 4 because he's becoming one with the Force, accepting his death. And Anakin becomes one, which I have less of an excuse for, but to me, it was such a cathartic thing to finally see Anakin in the flesh, not Darth Vader, that I'll let it pass, because it wouldn't have felt as good if he wasn't a Force ghost. But now everyone gets to be a Force ghost. If you had the Force, and in some cases if you didn't, you're a Force ghost, meaning that
you get a Force ghost.
The whole thing with Qui-Gon and the significance. You get a Force ghost. Everybody, like, it just makes it to where, again, it's just watered down, and you take what once was special and you just make it a corporate sellout disaster, which is Disney Star Wars in a nutshell. It just stops. It just loses its meaning. Like when I saw Luke and Leia looking at Rey on Tatooine, I felt nothing. Because we all knew they were going to do it, because it's lost its meaning and its impact, because it's so overdone. Right. Anyway, so Kylo decides to throw his lightsaber away, and he's Ben Solo again, I guess. And so the Resistance decides, hey, we're going to go find Exegol. How do we find it? Meanwhile, Rey talks to Luke on whatever that planet was, and I'm sorry, I'm getting towards the end, I promise. I just really needed to air this out. But Luke talks to Rey, and I actually didn't mind Luke in this scene. I thought that this was a better representation of a Jedi Master Luke. But Rey's like, I'm going to put myself in exile just like you did. And Luke's like, okay, but don't. And she's like, okay, I won't. But how do I get to Exegol? And he's like, you have everything you need. Here's my X-Wing, lifted out of the ocean. You know, the X-Wing that's been sitting there for God knows how many years. It still flies just fine, even though 1 movie ago we established that fuel is really important in the Star Wars universe, and that it can define an entire plot point. But sure, take my 50-year-old X-Wing.
It's been in water for years.
That's been in water for probably years.
Wow.
Because the Force. It was powered by Force. So the Resistance follows Rey's, Luke's X-Wing to Exegol, which is fine. That makes sense. And the pilot played by the telepath guy from Heroes. This is just another detail thing. It looks like he is going to fly an A-Wing, which is the smaller, more narrow ship, as opposed to the X-Wing. I think Snap was his name. It looks like he's going to go into an A-Wing. When he dies in the final fight, he goes down in an X-Wing. I don't get it. Like,
what ship was he in again? Just throw in a clip of a ship getting down.
Because an X-Wing every single space battle, because that's Star Wars, just like we have to have all the Force ghosts and the throne rooms. Throw in an X-Wing pilot dying. And it has to be, I feel bad for saying this, but it has to be the fat pilot. I don't know if you've noticed this about Star Wars, but it's like a running joke that the fat pilot dies. In episode 4, Porkins, his name was Porkins, the fat X-Wing pilot. He's like the first one to die.
Wow.
And then in episode 1, there was a fat Naboo starfighter pilot. He didn't make it. Anyway, so they go to Exegol, and Rey is there with Palpatine, and he's just like, you're my granddaughter. And she's like, well, Kylo told her that earlier. And she's like, I hate this. I don't want to be your granddaughter. Wait, who are my parents? And he's like, they don't matter. It just matters that I'm your grandfather. Oh no. And Palpatine's like,
that's one of those things that like I've seen a lot of people say is like, who the heck did he rape somebody? There's no way he had a wife. And like, obviously his kids hated him and ran away from him. But like, how does this work? Like,
hey, you never know. Sheev Palpatine probably had some game back in his Senate days before the wrinkles.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. So Palpatine's like, hey, strike me down in your hatred. And if you do, all the Sith will be in you and you'll be the new queen because the Force. And she's like, I won't do it. And he's like, okay, but do it. And she's like, okay, I'll do it.
Well, what I've seen is she didn't kill him. She redirected his lightning so that he killed himself.
I'm not even referring to that. I'm referring to how he's like trying to be like, oh, do it to tempt her. And then she's like, no, I never will. And then he's just like, okay, I'm just going to force you to do it. And like she almost does.
Yeah.
And so then the fleet shows up and they're like, oh, we have to attack the antenna. And they fly down to the antenna and it shows that they're just flying through just a field of Star Destroyers. It's just all hell breaks loose and they fly through it and they get down to the antenna. And then General Pride on the flagship is just like, oh, they're going for the antenna. Retract the antenna. Will be the antenna. And so the fleet gets down to the antenna literally as soon as they get there, and the antenna just goes whoop away. and then they're like, oh no, what do we do? And Finn, the plot tells him, hey Finn, the antenna's on the flagship, and Finn goes, oh, it's up there. And Poe's like, all right, guys, back the way we came. Come on, we got to go back up. And the fleet just turns around and flies back up there, making that the most useless 3 minutes I've ever seen in a Star Wars movie.
Well, and going along with that, like, you would assume that even the command ship, it can't be the only one that has an antenna that could have served as the guidance system. Like, surely every ship had one of those. Like, they could have just been bleeping it
when the
wherever.
When the designer of those Star Destroyers was designing them, the Force convinced him to not do that.
Only so one of these needs a beacon.
They fly up there and they land on the side of a Star Destroyer and have a fight scene on the side of the Star Destroyer, which it was dumb, in my opinion. It honestly, this entire final act felt to me like I was watching a dude play with action figures. Just because, like, where can we put the characters? Oh, they're on the side of a Star Destroyer. Oh no, lightning. Like, it was dumb, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So they're working on all the crap with the Star Destroyer, and then Kylo shows up and gets he opens Rey's drop box that she left him in the form of a lightsaber. He kills the Knights of Ren, shows up in the throne room, and they're like, we'll kill you together. And then Palpatine's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll have to force suck the life out of you, something I should have done at the very beginning. And he sucks the life out of them, turning his robe red for some reason. And then he picks up Kylo Ren and yeets him into a hole, making Kylo's presence there and redemption, which we're supposed to think is a big deal, makes it mean absolutely nothing because he was useless. He did nothing for the entire thing. So Rey is like basically praying to the Force, saying, be with me, be with me, be with me. And the Force calls back to her, and this was kind of cool, but again, it kind of points to the whole, I guess everyone's a Force ghost now, because she hears the voices of Hayden Christensen's Anakin, Ewan McGregor and Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, Yoda, Ahsoka Tano from Clone Wars and Rebels, Kanan from Rebels, Luminara Unduli, not Shakti, Ayla Secura, Adi Gallia, like just pretty much everyone.
Did you recognize these names in the moment, or have you looked up a list of who there was?
I knew who they were, but I didn't recognize the voices of Adi Gallia, Ayla Secura, and Luminara Unduli. I knew who they were, but I didn't know their voices.
Cool. Because I heard Yoda and was like, look, it's Yoda. And that was me. Everybody else could have told me it was who knows. And I just, like I maybe recognized Luke's voice and Leia's voice in there. But mostly I was like, Yoda, because he sounded way different than everybody else.
Yeah. So meanwhile, when she's like calling upon the Force, everyone's dying in the space battle, and their indication of that is, you guessed it, the fat guy getting shot down. That's like 3 Star Wars movies that I can name off the top of my head, probably more. That has been their indicator of, oh no, things are going bad, is when the fat pilot dies. So Snap dies. We all knew it was going to happen. And Poe's like, I guess we're going to die, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not a good leader. Why? What was my arc again? Why am I here? And then Lando's
wasn't I supposed to die in the first movie?
Yep. And then Lando goes, on your left. And then in the first of 2 blatant Avengers Endgame ripoffs in the span of 5 minutes, which is done by the same company, you hear a voice of a flying black man. I don't know. That's a connective tie. And every ship in Star Wars shows up to be part of this fight. Mm-hmm. Just like in Avengers Endgame, how all the portals opened up. Now imagine in Avengers Endgame, if that scene happened and you didn't know any of the people there.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how this came off. Mm-hmm. Like it was one of those things where, like, if you froze that image of all of the ships and you just like made it a poster, put it up on your wall, that's the most enjoyment you'd get out of it, because it's a cool image.
Well, like
for like Star Wars,
there were people pointing out like, oh my gosh, that's the ship from the Rebels, or oh my gosh, that's the ship from whatever. And like, you're expecting, oh my gosh, are we going to have like this Avengers Endgame moment where like everything comes together and like these people who have been off in their own sections of space dealing with what's happening, are they going to all, are they just going to show up at the end and it be like, oh my gosh, look who's here, and oh my gosh, they're here, and but no, just the ship shows up. We don't even know who's flying it. For all we know, it's not even their ship. You know, it's just, we don't know anything.
And it's one of those things that's cool where it's like, okay, yeah, screensaver, that's nice. In fact, Mando's ship was in there.
Yeah.
And I could be mistaken, but I think the Raven's Claw was in there from Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's my point.
Which makes
it's like there's so many recognizable ships that have no payoff. Right. We don't see in the like it. Just imagine for a moment if we got a shot inside Mando's ship. And it's Mando and Baby Yoda, who would be teenage Yoda maybe at this point. And it's just like, what? Like, I would have freaked out at that. But no, we don't get any of that. So, and to they which, didn't even try. If that's the case, if we're not going to look in the ships and say, hey, look, this character from your other favorite show is here, then why did we show the ship? Like, why bother? Let's get really crazy and do generic ships that people have never seen before and go from there.
Because it's really easy to bank on nostalgia and not try.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I felt in that moment. Like, that was one of the only shots in the movie where, like, I actually, like, jerked back a little bit. Because, like, when the ships showed up, it was like, oh, wow. Mm-hmm. But then literally the next scene when I realized, oh, that's it. We're just going to show Wedge. Okay. Which I guess that's kind of cool. Wedge Antilles, the ace pilot from the original trilogy, was there. Okay. He had one frame in the movie.
He said, nice flying.
Yeah. And then Babu Frick, who we thought had died, our Lord and Savior Babu Frick shows up. And like this scene, Cody and I sat next to each other, and I'm so glad we did. Cause like, when What's-Her-Face was there talking to Poe, and she does this thing like Batman from Batman Forever or whichever one, where he like flies by and gives the thumbs up and just keeps flying. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what this bounty hunter or whatever chick did. She was like talking to Poe, and it's like, how are you talking to him? You're in a space battle. There's no way that you can see each other. And then Babu Frick pops up in the cockpit and goes, ah! And it's like, okay, that was for us, but cool, Babu's alive. But anyway, so it's like, oh, cool, the portal scene from Avengers Endgame, great. And then Palpatine shoots lightning up into the sky, but it doesn't make a lightning noise. It just goes, like it just makes a deep bass noise. Like, my head tilted at that because it was like, it's like I would have had the same reaction probably if he had done that and a goat noise would have come out. It just didn't make sense to me. So he hits all the ships and they start to fall. And then Rey, all of the Jedi are with her, and she gets up and she has the lightsaber and she just holds it there. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like she doesn't even like hold it with two hands, like, like acting like she's holding it back. She just literally just holds it there. Like she's like they told her that they were taking an old time photograph of her and she had to remain perfectly still. Like that's what it looked like. And in the second Avengers Endgame ripoff, in the span of 5 minutes, Palpatine shooting lightning at her goes, I am all of the Sith. And then Rey goes, and I am all of the Jedi. Pulls out a second lightsaber.
I literally, when that moment happened, I leaned over to Lee Allison as she was like, I am, and I went, Iron Man. And I was so excited, but yeah, no.
It was stupid to me how she just like pulled out a second lightsaber and that was the Force being with her, and the lightning redirected back and Palpatine exploded. Like, I felt nothing. It was just like, oh, okay, he melted. Sure, Palpatine's gone, I guess, until they revive him again in the next trilogy. And then Kylo comes up after Rey is dying and does the whole Force life transfer thing, making Darth Plagueis a complete chump. And
I did hear somebody or reading kind of some, like, just trying to figure out, different things like what the orange or green, yellow lightsaber meant. one of the things I kind of came across was, how does force healing work? Like, what are its limitations? And talking about that moment, and they kind of compared it of it's this interesting completion of what Anakin was trying to do, because Anakin wanted to learn how could he save Padme, how could he come to this moment, and it never really came to fruition until until Ben Solo, his grandson, had to save Rey. But again, I still don't know how it makes sense.
You mean to tell me that was them paying off the trailer line from Force Awakens where Kylo says, "I will finish what you started," to Vader's helmet?
I mean, I don't know if that was the intent, but like just this person who I had read, who I don't even remember who wrote the article, but they were kind of saying, "Oh, that's kind of interesting how that you could see it as that."
I appreciate the theory, but nothing about like it's a cool theory in the sense that like I think other theories are cool that I don't think were ever intended whatsoever.
Right.
Because to me it's just like, okay, yeah, interesting thought, but that's definitely not what they were going for. Or at least I didn't get that vibe at all. Mm-hmm. And if they did not do a good job of giving that vibe.
Yeah.
So Kylo Force ghosts, because of course he does. And then it cuts back to Forced Planet number 5, and Leia's body has been waiting this whole time to Force ghost until Kylo Force ghosted. So, I don't know. Imagine if you're like the person cleaning the rooms at Force Planet number 5 and you see this body just disappear. Probably.
I mean, Maz was there. She saw it happen, didn't she?
Probably.
I thought she was standing
right
over her.
She probably saw and winked to the camera. I'm surprised she didn't like look like nudge R2 and be like, "That means that she's a Force ghost now." And then Maz, because she's the one that explains the plot, in case the Force didn't explain it well enough for you, goes up to Chewie. And she's just like, "Hey, I've got something for you," and gives him a medal and then winks to the camera. Maz Kanata is Deadpool now, I guess. Can break the fourth wall and wink to us. Because why not? Why not?
I hesitate to ask this question, but was that your last complaint? Because I want to backtrack to one other one.
That's my last complaint before I just give an overall summary.
Okay.
And then finally be done because I'm ready to stop talking.
I want to backtrack you to one other thing that I thought was kind of pointless. So we have this whole conflict with C-3PO where he can read Sith, but he cannot translate it because his programming dictates that he can't. And so they go to Babu Frick to get him to reprogram him. But it's going to make him forget everything. Does R2 have a backup? How does that work? Well, R2's not going to have a backup. He doesn't have a backup of me, so this is it. And so they're like, well, the odds better than anyone. What is it? Is there any other option? And he goes, there's nothing. This is how we have to do it. And so they look, they're like, you okay, R2? And he's like, I'm just taking one more moment to look at my friends, sir. And then they brain wipe him. He says the Sith line. And then he comes back and he forgets everything. He's like, "Oh, who are you guys? It's nice to meet you. I'm C-3PO. I'm human-robot relations, whatever." Like, cool. I thought that was fine. I really kind of wish I almost wish he had just died. You know what I mean? Like, I wish that resetting had, like, just fried his circuits and that was the end of C-3PO. Like, I don't hate C-3PO as a character, but, like, that was a very emotional moment. I think they were trying to tug emotions there. And then they just took it away. And then at the end, we get back to Force Planet number 5. And R2's like, well, here, buddy, let me just back up your memory. And he boots him back up and it's fine. It's like, why did we have this moment?
It was completely pointless.
Completely pointless.
Because
it did give us Babu Frick. And maybe that was worth it.
It did give us Babu Frick. That is true. So when you were saying the whole, what are you doing there, 3PO? Just taking one last look at my friends. That whole thing. Like, I laughed at that line because he stands there after they ask him what are the odds. He stands there, and I don't know if you guys know this about C-3PO, but he doesn't have facial expression. He's a robot that doesn't have like anything except like eyes and a mouth that don't move. Mm-hmm. And so C-3PO stands there for a moment just doing this. Okay? And then Poe, after like 2.5 seconds, looks at 3PO and goes, what are you doing there, 3PO? Like, why would you even ask that? It just looks like he's standing. He can't emote to make you think that he's going through something.
Oh man.
It felt very much like a we need this line for the trailer, so let's get it. So
final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I touched on it earlier. Rise of Skywalker isn't as offensive as Last Jedi was for me. It was just bad. It was entertaining, had some good action pieces, even though the space battles were awful. But it was entertaining. It was just really dumb.
Yeah.
It tried to make the best of a bad situation, but just went with a really safe version of turning a bad situation into a good situation that ended up making just another bad situation.
Yeah.
It had pretty much not a single original bone in its body. It gave us the second throne room showdown with space battle happening above scene that we've had in 2 movies. Like it repeated itself. Like it repeated what had already happened in the Disney trilogy several times, which was already repeating what we've already seen. Mm-hmm. And I already talked about how I hate the Force now because writers use it as a crutch to think that they don't need to stay true to organized plot. Mm-hmm. They don't need to make things natural or adhere to order. So I hate the Force now. Oh gosh, what was I saying? What was I talking about before I said that?
You were just giving your final thoughts.
I remember. So there are people out there, and this is my final thoughts on the trilogy as a whole. I think that Rise of Skywalker, I probably enjoyed it the most because it was the most entertaining. Force Awakens is probably the best of the 3, but Last Jedi, it's still the worst.
Yeah.
I don't care if you think it's a good standalone film. It is the worst Star Wars film in the entire franchise. And that includes Attack of the Clones at me.
I was about to say that, but that's a lot.
At least Attack
Even
of the
worse
Clones
than Solo?
I actually haven't seen Solo.
Oh, okay.
So.
All right.
Yeah. But at least Attack of the Clones gave us really iconic, beautiful music in the form of things like Across the Stars, and it gave us the last 15 minutes in Geonosis where all of the Jedi showed up.
Right.
That's value, and it moved the envelope forward, which is my point. I've seen so many people who hate Rise of Skywalker. They may even hate Last Jedi, but most of them are like, oh, Last Jedi was a great film. Rian Johnson, our Lord and Savior, wasn't given the chance to be our Lord and Savior, which is stupid. Those people say like, and they are just brutal to Rise of Skywalker, but they end with, still better than the prequels. Like, this trilogy's still better than the prequels. And to anyone who may be thinking that the prequels are the worst thing to ever happen, and think that they don't have more value than the Disney trilogy, ask yourself this question. Like, really ask yourself, what did this trilogy give us? Like, at the end, when everything was said and done, how has Star Wars been pushed forward? It hasn't. It's given us nothing except for visuals and bad jokes and a few characters that weren't given time to develop into people that we can care about.
I don't know. I like Rey a lot. I think I like where Rey ended up.
I hate Rey because she is the product of 3 different writers. So she never she still doesn't have identity to me. She can say she's a Skywalker all day. We can know she's a Palpatine all day. But who is Rey? She's just someone who is waiting to have the blank spaces filled. That's what defines her. And so to me, she's not a good character. She may be fun to follow, but she's not a good character, and I won't remember her. But what did the prequels give us? Sure, they gave us midichlorians and Jar Jar, which are cringy, and it gave us some cringy lines like "I hate sand" and all that kind of stuff. But the prequels gave us so much we hadn't seen. We got a lot of the Jedi. We were given a great story into the descent of Darth Vader. And say what you want about Hayden Christensen, but he was the right cast for that role. He was someone who didn't seem to know how to express his emotions because he was trained at a young age to repress his emotions. So, of course, when he yells out about how much he hates Tusken Raiders, it's going to be weird because it's weird to him as a character. It makes sense. We're given a story that is new, that heightens what Star Wars is. And yet you guys are out there saying that this sequel trilogy is still better because you're blinded by the opinions of the internet, and you need to really stop and give it your own thought rather than just listening to what everyone else says.
And on that note,
the Disney
stop listening to what we're saying. I'm just kidding.
Start listening to what we're saying instead of what everybody else is saying.
That's right.
The Disney trilogy was terrible.
To wrap it up for me, the only thing I was going to say is I, for one, the movie was fine, whatever. I'm glad that they have put a nice little bow on the Skywalker saga, and from here on out, we're hopefully going to get Mandalorian type Star Wars movies from here on out. And what I mean by that is we're not going to be held down by, okay, we're trying to recreate the magic that was the original trilogy, or even beyond that, just A New Hope. Like, we're trying to capture what A New Hope did over and over again. We can now say, hey, let's look at what this one Mandalorian did when he found a baby Yoda, like, what about, or even things like what Fallen Order is doing. Like, here's a story of somebody who survived, and they're trying to make their way in the galaxy on their own, and they're not dealing with everything else that's happening right now. So I look forward to going to that now in the future.
Or we could go to the Old Republic, which would be huge wish fulfillment for a lot of people. Just somewhere different, whether it's way in the future, way in the past. I don't care. Let's just get something new.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We're getting something. That's a better way to say it. We're getting something new next, hopefully.
Hopefully.
So that's all I want.
Yeah.
And God, I'm so glad I didn't have any other topics for this podcast, because originally I told you it was going to be long. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Chortlecast. We do hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, there's a couple things you can do to help us out. Number one, if you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook, like this, follow us on those platforms, share it with your friends, subscribe, hit the notification bell. There's so many things to say in regards to all of those. But anyway, do all those things. You can go YouTube, chortlegames.com, Facebook, @ChortleGames, Twitch, Chortle_games. There you go. Okay. My brain just broke. You can leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought of the show. Let us know what you thought about the sequel, Star Wars. Are you watching The Witcher? Did you like it? All that jazz. If you're an audio listener, you're listening through iTunes, Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review there. That really helps folks find the channel. If you'd like to see more of us or hang out with us post-stream, you can join our Discord, and that is in the description of this video, stream, whatever. We've got great stuff going on there. We've got a meme channel. It's got a bunch of Baby Yoda memes. We got channels for different games that we're playing, so lots of great fun stuff. You can keep up with the community, keep up with us, and then you can follow us on Twitter @ChortleGames. because if you're already on Facebook, whatever. I used to say that. Now I don't have to. The show airs every Monday at 5 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. That's a new time. So if you're just catching up to the show, that's when it is. If you're used to the show being at 12, it's at 5 now. So it can be live. Or it's always pre-recorded, but it's streamed live. There you go. Steven, thank you for ranting about Star Wars.
Yeah.
And giving us your full thoughts.
That wasn't even my full thoughts.
Don't be sorry.
That was the abridged.
Don't be sorry. You don't have to be sorry. Just be better.
Okay. That's okay.
And on that note, thank you guys for watching. We will see you. Oh, I got to talk about the schedule. I'm sorry. First off, Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays. Christmas is just a few days away here in America. Hope you all have a great holiday. Spend it with family, friends, yada yada. Normally we stream not all week, but pretty frequently throughout the week. This week it's going to be very different because of the holiday. Steven and I might be streaming tonight. It would probably be going up right after this podcast at this point, because this podcast is pushing 2 hours, and it's starting at 5, so that would be right about when we would normally stream. We may be doing kind of just a little, hey, Merry Christmas stream, whatever. It may just be Steven. It may be Steven and Jeremy from Maybe the Gamesters. So just stay tuned afterwards. Follow us. Make sure you see if we're going live. We will probably not have another stream until the podcast next Monday. That would be the 30th of December. If we do have any, it's going to be like that Saturday. We might get to have a stream. It'll be Steven if we do that. But our podcast next Monday is going to be our Game of the Year show, which was going to be crammed into this, but I'm really glad that I made the decision to push that another week.
I can't even imagine how long.
Yeah, man, this is a packed podcast already. So, our personal, we're going to give a top 5 games of our games of the year for 2019 next week's podcast. And we're also going to be doing a most disappointing game we played this year. So we're just going to give one, maybe 2, like an honorable mention, but just the most.
I've already got my pick.
Oh, I do too. I had originally planned it for this, so I was prepared. But then I was like, you know what? We're not going to have time. So anyway, it's going to be a good podcast next week. Like I said, streams are going to be minimal. Probably won't have anything this week other than maybe Saturday and maybe just right after this. So. If we don't see you again, thank you for watching Chortle Games this year. We'll probably say some sappy stuff next episode as well. But have a Merry Christmas as you go. Spend time with your family, spend time with your friends, and just take a break. Enjoy this time. Yeah. Steven, any other closing thoughts you want to say?
Oh, man, you put me on the spot. No.
Baba Frick! Goodbye, everybody.
Babu Frick! Merry Christmas, guys.